Once, there was an old man who had lost his wife many years ago. Life was simple for him, but it was also lonely. He married again, hoping to find happiness, but his new wife was very different from him. She was an old widow with a sharp tongue and a cruel heart. The old man was gentle, kind, and patient, while the old woman was harsh, mean, and selfish. Each of them had a daughter from their first marriages. The old man's daughter was like him, kind, gentle, and always helping others. On the other hand, the old woman's daughter was as cruel and selfish as her mother. The old woman adored her daughter, giving her all the love and care she could offer, but she despised the old man's daughter. Every little thing the girl did seemed wrong in her stepmother's eyes. She scolded her, called her names, and gave her the hardest chores in the house. One day, the stepmother's hatred reached its peak. She shouted at her husband, "Your useless daughter is of no value to anyone. She's a burden. Take her to the forest and leave her there. Don't come back with her, or you'll regret it." The old man was heartbroken. He loved his daughter deeply, but feared his wife's anger. Hesitatingly, he obeyed. Early the next morning, with tears in his eyes, he took his daughter by the hand. "I'm sorry, my child," he whispered as they walked into the forest. She didn't understand what was happening until he hugged her tightly and left her alone in the woods. The forest was dark and silent. Tall trees surrounded her, their branches forming eerie shadows on the ground. Tall trees surrounded her, their branches forming eerie shadows on the ground. The girl felt scared, but tried to be brave. She wandered through the woods, hoping to find someone or something to help her. Hours passed, and she grew tired and hungry. Suddenly, she noticed a little hut hidden among the trees. She knocked on the door, but no one answered. Carefully, she pushed it open and stepped inside. The hut was small but cozy. There was a table with a bench, a stove, and a spinning wheel. Beside the spinning wheel was a basket filled with wool. Relieved to find shelter, she sat down at the spinning wheel and ate the strawberries she had picked along the way. As night fell, the forest outside became darker and more frightening. Suddenly, she heard a deep, rumbling voice outside the hut. "Who's there? Let it not be a thief! Let it not be a thief!" the voice boomed. The girl's heart raced with fear, but she gathered her courage and replied, "I'm not a thief. I've been left alone in the forest. Please, let me stay here for the night." The door creaked open, and to her shock, a large bear walked in. She froze, unsure whether to scream or run. But the bear spoke gently. "Good evening, girl." "Good evening," she managed to reply, her voice trembling. The bear sat down and asked, "Did you come here by your own will, or were you forced?" With tears streaming down her face, the girl told him everything about her cruel stepmother, her frightened father, and how she had been abandoned in the forest. The bear listened patiently, then gently patted her face with his paw. "Don't cry, kind maiden," he said softly. "You will find happiness one day, but for now, you must help me. Do you see that basket of wool? Spin it into thread. Then weave the thread into cloth, bleach it, and sew a shirt for me. I'll return tomorrow at the same time. If you complete the task, I'll reward you." The girl nodded, though she wasn't sure how she could finish such a task in one night. As soon as the bear left, she sat by the spinning wheel and began spinning the wool. The moonlight streaming through the window lit her work. She worked tirelessly, and by dawn, she had spun all the wool into thread. But now, she needed a loom to weave the thread into cloth. Exhausted, she sat down, unsure of what to do, and fell asleep. When she woke up, she was surprised to see a loom by the window and breakfast waiting on the table. She quickly ate and began weaving the thread into cloth. By midday, the cloth was ready. She took it to a nearby brook, soaked it, and spread it in the sun to bleach. To her amazement, the cloth whitened quickly. She returned to the hut, cut the cloth, and began sewing a shirt. Evening fell, and she was just finishing when the bear walked in. "Is the shirt ready?" he asked. "Yes," she said, handing it to him. The bear nodded approvingly. "Thank you. Now, I must reward you. You said your stepmother is cruel. If you wish, I can send my bears to punish her and her daughter." Horrified, the girl cried, "No. Please don't hurt anyone. I couldn't bear it." The bear smiled. "Very well. Make me some porridge for dinner. Everything you need is in the kitchen. I'll prepare my bedding." While the girl cooked, a small mouse ran out from under the bench. Standing on its hind legs, it squeaked, "Kind mistress, I'm so hungry. Please give me something to eat." Feeling sorry for the mouse, the girl gave it a spoonful of porridge. The mouse ate, thanked her, and scurried away. When the bear returned, he ate his porridge and gave the girl a curing. "Tonight, you must walk around the room, ringing these keys until morning. If you survive, you'll be lucky." The bear lay down on the stove, snoring loudly. The girl began walking around the room, ringing the keys. Soon, the mouse reappeared and said, "Give me the keys, mistress, and hide behind the stove. I'll ring them for you." The girl hid while the mouse ran up and down, ringing the keys. At midnight, the bear woke up and began throwing stones and wood across the room. "Are you alive?" he growled. "Yes, I'm alive," she replied, trembling behind the stove. The bear kept throwing stones, but the mouse never stopped ringing the keys. Finally, morning came. The bear climbed down from the stove and looked at the girl. "You have a brave and kind heart," he said. "I am not truly a bear. I am a king who was cursed. Your kindness has broken part of the spell. Soon, I will return to my human form. Look into my right ear." The girl looked and saw a beautiful kingdom with mountains, rivers, and bustling cities. "What do you see?" the bear asked. "A beautiful land," she replied. "That is my kingdom," said the bear. "And I would be honored if you became my queen." The girl smiled, unsure of what the future held, but feeling hope for the first time. The young woman couldn't believe her eyes as she looked out at the magnificent scene in front of her. The palace was enormous, its walls shimmering like gold under the sunlight. In the large courtyard, There were carriages of every size and color. Some were decorated with sparkling jewels, while others were draped in the finest fabrics. Horses stood proudly next to the carriages, their coats shining like silk. Inside the carriages, she saw treasures, rich garments made of velvet and silk, glittering jewelry, and rare objects that looked priceless. The bear, standing beside her, noticed her amazement and asked gently, "What do you see?" She described everything she had seen with great excitement: the beauty of the palace, the carriages, the horses, and all the treasures. The bear listened quietly, his eyes twinkling with a secret. "Tell me," the bear said after a moment, "which carriage do you find the most beautiful?" She looked again, her gaze falling on one particular carriage that seemed to shine brighter than the rest. "The one with 4 horses," she said, pointing to it. The bear nodded with a satisfied smile. "Then it is yours," he declared. Before she could even understand what he meant, the ground began to tremble slightly, and a sound of hoofbeats echoed through the forest. A golden carriage, pulled by 4 magnificent horses, came to a stop right in front of the cottage. The girl gasped as the bear handed her a gown made of golden fabric and a pair of diamond earrings that sparkled like stars. "Your father will come soon to take you home," the bear told her in a kind but firm tone. "In a few days, the spell that binds me will be broken. I will become a king again, and I will come to take you to my kingdom." With those words, the bear turned and walked into the forest, disappearing among the trees. The girl, now dressed in her golden gown and diamonds, stood by the window, looking out into the distance, waiting for her father. 3 days passed, and on the 3rd day, her father finally arrived at the forest cottage to take her home. Meanwhile, at home, the stepmother and her daughter had been waiting impatiently. One evening, they heard barking outside the window. The girl's favorite dog was barking loudly. "The old man is bringing back his daughter," the dog barked. "She is wearing a golden dress and sparkling diamonds." The stepmother, filled with jealousy and anger, kicked the dog harshly. "You liar," she shouted. "He's bringing back her bones, not her riches." But when they stepped outside, they saw the golden carriage. The girl was sitting inside, shining with beauty, her golden gown and diamonds making her look like a queen. The stepmother, hiding her jealousy, put on a fake smile and welcomed the girl warmly. "Oh, my dear, where did you get such riches?" she asked sweetly. The girl told them everything about the bear, the forest hut, and the treasures he had given her. The stepmother listened, her mind already planning something. The next morning, the stepmother baked delicious cakes and gave them to her own daughter. Turning to the old man, she said, "If your daughter was so lucky, my daughter will be even luckier. Take her to the forest hut so she can meet the bear too." The old man, obedient as always, took his stepdaughter to the forest hut and left her there. Confident in her beauty and charm, the girl walked into the hut without hesitation. Inside, it looked simple and plain. The same table stood in the corner, the same benches lined the walls. The stove sat near the door, and the spinning wheel rested under the window, with a basket of wool beside it. She sat down on one of the benches and began eating the cakes her mother had packed for her. As night fell, a deep, rumbling voice echoed through the hut. "Who is here? Let it not be a thief." Startled, the girl replied, "I'm not a thief. I was left here alone in the forest. Please let me stay the night." The door creaked open, and the bear stepped inside. The girl stood up, gave him her best smile, and waited for him to bow first. The bear, however, looked at her sternly. After a moment, he gave a small bow and said, "Welcome. You may stay, but only if you do something for me." "What is it?" she asked, her smile fading. "You must spin the wool in the basket into thread," the bear said, pointing to the spinning wheel. "Then you must weave the thread into cloth, bleach the cloth, and sew it into a shirt. Only then can you stay." With that, the bear turned and left the hut, heading back into the forest. The girl sighed loudly. "I didn't come here to work," she muttered. She ignored the spinning wheel, made herself comfortable on a bench, and soon fell asleep. The next evening, the bear returned and asked, "Is the shirt ready?" The girl stayed silent, pretending not to hear. "Prepare my dinner," the bear ordered. "Everything you need is in the kitchen." "I'll be back shortly." The bear left again, and the girl reluctantly lit a fire in the stove. She began making porridge when a little mouse appeared. Standing on its hind legs, the mouse begged, "Please, kind lady, give me something to eat. I'm so hungry." But the girl, annoyed, grabbed a spoon and threw it at the mouse. The poor creature ran away, frightened and hungry. When the bear returned, he brought a heavy load of stones and wood. After eating his porridge, he placed the stones on the stove. "Here are some keys," he said, handing them to the girl. "Walk through the hut all night, jingling them. If you're still alive by morning, you will be rewarded." The bear lay down and began snoring loudly. The girl, though frightened, began walking around the hut, jingling the keys. But around midnight, the bear woke up, grabbed a stone, and threw it toward the jingling sound. The stone struck her, and she fell dead to the floor. At dawn, the bear saw her lifeless body. He stepped outside, stamped his foot 3 times on the ground, and thunder and lightning filled the sky. In that moment, the bear transformed into a handsome young king. A royal carriage arrived, pulled by 6 magnificent horses. Without looking back, the king got into the carriage and rode away to his kingdom. The old man, sent by the stepmother to retrieve her daughter, returned with nothing but her bones. When the stepmother saw this, she was overcome with grief and turned to stone by her sorrow. Meanwhile, the king returned for the girl he loved, married her, and brought her father to live happily in his kingdom.